Welcome to episode 3 of I Married a Melchizedek. Well, I didn't actually. Hazel did. I'm your host, Renata Duma, and I'm here with Hazel Davies. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Hazel is more than likely the only person on planet Earth at this time that can say the title of this show and mean it personally. Because, yeah, she did marry a Melchizedek, namely Jonathan C.R. Davies. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're so inclined. Links to the show will also be listed on the Unity Living website at unitybubble.com. We'll talk about that later. Bit of a surprise. And if you're not familiar with the Unity Bubble, you soon will be as we get deeper into this and future shows. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Hazel Davies, Head and Master Unity Bubble Facilitator and Life Partner to Melchizedek Come to Earth, Jonathan C.R. Davies. Hazel, welcome once again to your show.
Thank you, Renata. Episode 3. Who would have known?
Who'd have known I got you through to episode 3?
I know. I'm doing it.
Just for the audience, we had a couple of things going on, and I said, well, Hazel, we could always postpone. She said, no, people are waiting. People want the show. So, no, she's on fire now. Alrighty, so let's get to business. A fundamental aspect of the Unity work that Jonathan brought forward was this idea of a shift towards the higher aspects of the self and how subtle that shift is. Can you expand on that for us?
Yes, they, the infamous they up there in the ethers that we talk to a lot, they would say something like, but it's just a shift, Jonathan. It's just a shift. And Jonathan would say, I don't know how to do just a shift. And I think what happens is it is not one moment in time. It is a lot of moments that a shift and then another shift and then another shift as you do your own personal work towards self-mastery. So you get a shift, and sometimes there are no words to understand or to put into a language what that difference is or what that shift is, but you know something has changed. And I think that probably describes it in the best way as a lot of small shifts. Because if you had one big shift, you wouldn't know who you were. Like you would wake up and you would like look in the mirror and you would not know who you were looking at. So it's important to do things in a systematic way, which is why I love the bubble so much, because it's very systematic to the individual person. Because, sometimes I'll have a client that says, bring it on, I want to do it all. And go, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. I have two words that I like to use. That's graceful and easeful. Yes, we want to do our work. Yes, we want to go deep. But we want to do it in a systematic way that we can grab hold of and also enjoy it. Because it is very satisfying when one does one's own work and you see, I've been doing that for so long and that's why. So there's an understanding of self at the same time as you can get to that point of the of shifting.
Thank you for that. And I've actually had a few shifts of my own in the past few days, and I'm trying to understand it energetically, because obviously it doesn't matter what level of work we're at or who we are, we're going to continue to shift and have shifts. And I think what I'm trying to ask is, do you think it has something to do with the level of awareness that we're carrying, that's an energetic frequency, or like it's almost like turning the dial up just a hair? And then we're able to perceive more beyond that which we weren't able to perceive before. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Because there is so much going on energetically on the planet as a whole. lots of new energies coming in, lots of light, which is knowledge and wisdom. So, and as we absorb that light and take it in and embody it and ground it and anchor it, then yes, they are shifts. It is, and the word that just came to me was, it is all about change, because it's always changing, whether it's a big shift, a little shift, this or that. It is because everything is always changing. There is nothing that is stagnant. As the saying goes, the only thing constant is change.
Exactly.
But you know, a lot of people don't like change. They're scared of it. They're fearful of it, and they would rather, you know, have what they know, even if it's not good, even if they know that it's not good, but they still are familiar with it. So you always gravitate to the familiar, unless you don't, or until you don't.
Do you think that's part of the overall resistance that we come up against when people are deciding to do this kind of work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it's not just the resistance. Is, you know, the two requirements for doing this work is to be open and willing. But that doesn't mean open and willing in one moment. It's more to move into a state of being open and willing. So all the time, not just, you know, on a Saturday afternoon between 2 and 4, and then go back to doing whatever else it was that you were doing. It's to be able to, this is not easy. I'm not saying this is an easy state to achieve. And of course we fall off the path and then we come back on it again, and then we're open and willing, and then something else happens and we, you know, go off in a different direction, and then go, oh, you know, I need to get back to my center, and that is the place. Well, the place of power is that central point, where everything is possible from there.
The now. Is everything
yeah.
in,
and of course Jonathan was so good at living in the now, drove me insane at sometimes because he was so in the now. You know, he didn't care about anything. Well, it's not that he didn't care. He cared very deeply, and yet he didn't care, if that makes any sense. It's like, because whatever was in his awareness at that time, that was what he was dealing with.
Yeah, and it was only that, not contaminated by anything else.
No, we had maybe this is of interest. We always had this thing about Jonathan being spontaneous. You know, he was Mr. Spontaneous, and I was not spontaneous. So as you can imagine, in our relationship, it caused a few bumps in the road. And I'll give you a funny story. We were living in the motorhome. We were down in Arizona, I think, and in the motorhome, driving a 40-foot motorhome. And Jonathan's driving, and I'm just looking out the window. And he says, "Hey, there's that chicken place. There's one of those chicken places. You want to go?" That's Mr. Spontaneous. So because I'm not spontaneous, oh, well, I don't know. Am I hungry? Do I want chicken? Have I just had breakfast? When did I have chicken last? Is it lunchtime? Well, of course, by this time, we're way past the chicken place. And he did not understand why I couldn't make a spontaneous decision. Yes, let's go. Because when you're in a 40-foot motorhome, you can't just stop and back up.
Yeah.
You can only go forward, because we were towing a car behind the motorhome. Right. You can't reverse.
Right.
So the only way that you can actually come back on your path, is to stop the motorhome, get out, unhitch the car, which was my job, drive the car off to the side, turn the motorhome around, rehitch the car. Of course, traffic is being stopped in all this. This was not a good scenario. It's just like, I really wouldn't want chicken by the end of this. So,
don't want anything.
So we did have a discussion about why I could not do that. And we came up with, he was really spontaneous. I'm flexible. I'm not spontaneous. So Jonathan was not flexible. He had his standards and he had his way of working, which was the way that he was going to work. So we came to terms with it, with the understanding that I'm this way and he's that way, and how can we support each other in these differences and actually make it work for us? Because we were a very good team, you know, to work together. We were very good. Jonathan was always up in the ether somewhere. He was way up there. I had a natural gift, I suppose, or way of being to ground. I could ground a whole room without even really knowing what I was doing. It's just in my makeup.
Right.
So I could balance. I could bring balance and bring the grounding in, which was quite necessary, particularly when we started doing the sacred bubble work. Well, all the work, but really it started.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what just popped into my mind when you said the part about, you know, you can only go forward, not back. I mean, what a great corollary to life, right? You can't go backwards, right? You can only go forward. So, that said, we had talked last time a little bit about the idea of interference. And we just talked about resistance. Now let's move into interference, because it's a really big aspect of the bubble work, and it was a big aspect of why Jonathan came here in the first place. So let's touch on that area of interference again, especially in regards to the sacred bubble. Can you expand on that?
Yes, so the sacred bubble was designed to help, well, first of all, individuals, people who had interference. And when I say interference, this would be energetics that were stopping a person living, doing what they would really like to do. There would be some interfering energy which would sort of tap them on the shoulder and say, no, don't do that, or do this, which would be out of what they would want to do. So either way, it's external interferences. We're not talking about, you know, your neighbor that plays the trumpet at midnight, that kind of interference. We're talking about spiritual external interferences, and they come in various shapes and forms. We could have what I would term as an overall as dark energies, which are primitive energies. They are very primitive. Now, dark is not always bad. I think there's a misunderstanding that you know, a dark energy is always bad. This is not the case. There are also light energies, and not all light energies are good. So it is a matter of being in alignment. So are they in alignment, or are they not in alignment? And this would be in alignment with the soul path of an individual. And then we would have possible ET interference, and there's all kinds and different things of that nature. And then a big part of it was lost souls, like ancestral souls, or family members, or not even family, but some kind of connection where a lost soul, and by lost soul I mean a being that has been incarnate, and in the dying, of course we don't die, but in that transitional phase, they do not pass over. It's for whatever reason, but usually because they have either feel self-judgment that they haven't lived a very good life, or they've done something which they consider to be bad, and they don't take the light, the vortex of light that appears. It's a phenomenon that happens when somebody's in transition and at that stage. It only lasts for a very short time, probably not even a minute. It's like a vortex that opens up and then it closes. And it's kind of like getting on the bus. You know, the bus is here, are you coming? And if they don't get on the bus, it closes up, and then they get stuck. They get stuck between third and fourth dimension. So, and they can hop on another bus that would be appearing, but they either sometimes don't know, or again, don't feel worthy, whatever the reason. And they end up being stuck. And then they may attach themselves to some a being that is still incarnate. They're not all bad. You know, we have this idea that they're all bad. They're not all bad. They just it happens sometimes in wartime. You know, one of your army friends, you know, is dying, and then the friend says, "I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you." Mm-hmm. You know, my good buddy. You know, and they get stuck. They get stuck. So that's on an individual basis. There's also, you know, buildings, homes that have stuck energies, and that's another department altogether. I can clear buildings. It doesn't matter where they are. I don't have to go there. Mm-hmm. But let's get back to the individual ones. So the darker energies are primitive. Some of them they just don't know. Right. Some of them are really nasty. They cause a lot of problems. It runs the whole gamut from one end to the other, as is with the light beings too.
Right.
The light beings are more, I don't want to use the word advanced, but it is the next stage of evolution. So they have more intelligence. They tend to be more manipulative. They know more. They have a greater awareness, so that they can, if they turn as interference, they can actually do. They manipulate more. They're sneaky. They're sneaky, right? So the idea was when we started doing, first of all, we did individual work with people. Now, Jonathan could just, in the early days, we had to go through all these, basically these four sections of interference individually. Jonathan would have to and he could tell just by looking into a person's eyes whether if they had any interference, and everybody did. We did close to 1,000 over about 18 months. There was nobody that didn't have some kind of interference.
Right.
It was quite phenomenal. So he could tell if there was what interference there was, and then he would systematically clear the dark. If there was dark, clear the light, clear the ETs, and clear the lost souls. It took a long time. So that was on an individual basis, and that was the beginnings of the sacred bubble work. Eventually, it became more, let's say, elegant, and just by creating the sacred bubble, that did the whole job. But at first, it was very intense. It was not a fun time. You imagine if we had a group, let's say, of 12 or 15 people. Jonathan would have to go through everybody in the group individually, clearing the dark energy, clearing the light energies, clearing the ETs, and clearing the lost souls. We got it down to those four groups for every single being. And some of them were not nice. Some of them were, they did not want to leave.
Yeah.
They did
not resistance. Yeah.
They did not want to leave, and they would speak through the person who they were attached to, and the language was pretty gross, actually, a lot of times. So Jonathan never came at them in fighting mode. There was always great respect. There was always an opportunity for them to go forward, which we encouraged them to do that. Some of them were very open to going forward. The fact was that they had been caught. Let's say they'd been found out. They had managed to stay with the being for probably years and years and years without being caught. But the fact was, when Jonathan found them, the gig's up. Like, you have been interfering with this person. This is taking away their free will. This is no longer a possibility. So the bottom line is you're going to leave. How you leave, you can either go forward and we will help you with that, or you go back to where you came from. But the bottom line is you will be leaving this body. So it was very interesting. As I say, very intense. You don't mess around with this stuff. This is not a game. It's not a party game. It's not something that you have for entertainment. It's serious. And in the beginnings, I don't know if this is what you want to know from me, but anyway, you can cut it out if you don't like it. So in the beginning of doing these either individual clearings, let's say, or in a group, the beings were not happy that they being found out. And they would call, and they're in the energetic field. They're not in the body themselves. They're mainly, there are other circumstances, but mainly in the energetics field, in the subtle bodies. So when they were instructed, and Jonathan would say, either you can leave now, or I will command you. And they would know, because of Jonathan's energy, that he could command. And that's it's like the nice way or the nasty way, which would you like? But you're going anyway. So what they would do at the beginning, they would do as much damage as they could on their way out. They knew they were going, but they were kicking and screaming and not being very nice. So that's where I would come in, and I would have to basically put the energetic fields back together, because people would feel like they'd been ripped apart, which was not nice. This is not fun stuff.
No, not at all.
No. So that happened quite a bit.
If we were to go back, we haven't talked about this, but I'm curious to see what the paradigm is here. Where did that actually, where were permissions given for that to transpire in the first place?
They weren't. There weren't. There was no permission. This is a free will universe. Beings have a right to make their own choices, make their own decisions. And these beings were out of alignment, and they basically, wanted to be in charge, in control, and take away the energies. They feed on the dark ones in particular. They will feed on fear, all the the guilt, the shame, all the issues that we talk about. That attracts them. That attracts them in. You see. So if you have, it kind of makes little doorways, let's say, and then attracts the beings. Or it could be some karmic thing that's going on. Maybe they've been in that person's life for many generations or lifetimes. There's so many different circumstances, but no, they were never given permission to do that, because that's the directive of this universe. It's a free will universe. So when humans don't have that right, that's the directive. So when we do this work and give them the protection of the sacred bubble, so that these beings cannot come back in again until the issues of guilt and shame and all those issues that would have attracted them back in again, it gives the protective layer to give the humans the free will back again. So when they're being interfered with, they don't have that free will. They're not capable of making their own choices.
Exactly. And going back,
people, some people would say, well, you can give a sacred bubble, but it doesn't. You're kind of overreaching what you can do. So no. What we're doing is we're actually giving you back your free will. So when it's understood, from that level, not that I would go around giving sacred bubbles to, or particularly unity bubbles, but any bubble, any energetics, it's out of alignment for me or anybody else to just go, giving energy to where it's not asked for.
Right. So thank you for all of that. And what was coming up for me while you were speaking was, once again, this concept of resistance, where there is interference, there is actually a augmentation of one's innate fear, because they are fueling that so that it becomes a bigger deal. So again, knocking the person further off track so that they're less likely to get on track. Right?
Yeah, there were so many different scenarios. One amusing thing, if you can find this amusing, when we were doing a group, and Jonathan was doing some getting rid of some ETs. Now ETs can be all kinds of different ETs. As many as the alphabet. So this particular ET interference with this person was not going to go. Did not want to go. Liked it. Was giving a whole paragraph of why it shouldn't go, and blah blah blah. So Jonathan says, well, you have been found. I have found you, and this is the issue is, that you need to go. No, not going, kind of make me. Well, this particular ET was a small, they operate in armies, so there's always someone over them. They wait for the direction.
Right.
So Jonathan says, you have been found. Now, I'm going to tell you this. You go and you have a meeting with your elders, go out of time, have as long as you want to discuss it, and insert your answer in 10 seconds from now. Because they go out of time. It could be a year in Earth time. It doesn't matter. So then we waited the 10 seconds, right? And then this little voice came out of the person. We're leaving now. But because they realized, who Jonathan was, and the power that it doesn't bode well for them if they refuse, because he could command.
Yes, and it wouldn't be pretty. No,
would not be pretty. So he always gave them the choice. And,
well, that is
the focus. Is a huge focus for him to maintain that intensity and that focus until the job was done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to continue talking more about the sacred bubble. We're coming up around the half-hour mark.
Okay.
We can continue that time. It goes quickly, doesn't it? I know. So I'd like to touch on in the time that we're just going to take. Heck, let's talk some more about Jonathan because everybody is so interested in those.
Yes.
The particularly the more personal aspects that nobody would know. And that's why we're doing I'm Married in Melchizedek after all. So was there anything about Jonathan that you could say that was different from normal humans, besides the obvious aspect of his energy hitting you like a brick wall when you met him?
Well, he had different brainwaves. He had delta brainwaves. So he had his brainwaves tested once. This was a Jonathan thing, that if he was interested in something, and he said, I really want to know what my brainwaves are because I'm so different. And everybody seems to be hypnotized when I talk to them. And I'm not hypnotizing them, but, so somebody showed up that said, I'm doing this thing and I have these machines and we can test brainwaves. So Jonathan said, Count me in. I want to know. Well, of course, his brainwaves went off the chart. They kept resetting it and resetting it because they didn't believe that anybody could still be conscious and walking around, with these brainwaves. So he had delta brainwaves. So basically, Stan and Ollie used to joke and say, "Oh, you're just the Walking Dead." How do you operate, with those brainwaves? I don't have Delta, but I can get to, sometimes I can get to Delta, but he had them all the time. That was just his state of being. The other thing was that he was such a huge spirit that every morning when he woke up, he'd basically have to stuff himself into his body suit. And it was not pleasant. He said it was more like sticking his finger in an electric light socket. So he basically had to reanimate himself every single morning when he woke up. And it was like he was like this all the time. And it took, between 5 and 10 minutes to do this every day. So it was not, having that big a spirit and stuffing it into this, small body was not.
No.
It was not easy.
So clearly a couple of cups of coffee just didn't cut it.
No. No. What else?
That's great.
Yeah. Those two things kind of stick out to me.
They would stick out. They would stick out. Alrighty, well, I think we've reached the pretty much the top of the hour, and we can continue speaking more about the sacred bubble next week and some other topics. We'll see what comes up between now and then. And so thank you once again, Hazel, for another wonderful episode of I'm Married to Melchizedek. I'm your host, Renata Duma, wishing you a beautiful day in the flow of all creation, full of joy and positive outcomes. One more time, thank you, Hazel.
You're welcome, Renata. Thank you.
Thank you. With much love from Hazel and I to you, till next we meet again on the next wisdom and whimsy-filled episode of I Married a Melchizedek. Till then. See you.